marijuana, it's legal. There is so much in this bill for people who use marijuana, who sell marijuana. What do you need to know? What does this mean to you, to those you know, to your community where you live, work, visit, and travel? I am Sam Tate. The person who spearheaded this marijuana bill is New York State Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, and she is my guest. Assemblywoman Peoples-Stokes, welcome to Brooklyn 45.
Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure to be here. I appreciate you all inviting me. It's an awesome topic that you have to discuss here today. It is something that is dear to my heart. I've actually been carrying the legislation for 8 years, and the fact that we're able to get it done in 2021 is quite impressive, and I'm excited about what the potential results could look like for not just the people that I serve in the 141st Assembly District in the great city of Buffalo, but the people all throughout the state of New York who have been negatively impacted by the mass incarceration on the war on drugs. And really, you could really call that a war on Black and brown people, because even though it's a multiple billion-dollar industry right now as we speak in the state of New York, it's only been Black and brown people who have been incarcerated as a result of it. And they're the only ones who actually have the negative impacts on not just themselves, but their families, their children, and the communities where they reside.
There are so many people who are happy that you spearheaded this bill. Let's talk about your spearheading the bill.
Well, we spearheaded it not because it's a multiple billion-dollar industry underground. We spearheaded it because, in fact, the fact that so many people have been incarcerated as a result of committing what was then a nonviolent crime based on having low levels of marijuana, in most cases, even after they had done their time, because once you get out and you have a felony, you can't get a job, you can't live in public housing, you can't get access to college loans through the federal government. In many cases, you can't even get credit. It's hard to get insurance. Your life is stifled. And so unfortunately, because your life is stifled after being convicted of these low-level crimes, you end up recidivating. And so our prisons were filled with people who learned how to be better criminals because they were incarcerated for something that they never should have been incarcerated for. So the passage of this bill that legalizes the adult use of marijuana also expunges the records of folks who have been convicted or even who might even still be incarcerated for low levels of marijuana. So the records can be automatically expunged, and those that may be still incarcerated could have their sentences vacated.
Now, you mentioned the adult use of marijuana. Is there another type of marijuana? People are talking about medical marijuana.
Well, medical marijuana has been legal in the state of New York for about 6 years. There are 10 registered organizations who originally had licenses to provide services to people who had access to prescriptions from their doctor that says that you could have marijuana. So that has all been legal for the last 6 years. And the also other product is hemp, which is all basically the same plant. Some of them have more THC than others. And hemp is I want to say it's been legal for like the last 2 or 3 years in the state of New York. And so what we've done with this legislation is create something called the Office of Cannabis Management, because it is one plant. And so what used to be the medical marijuana under the health department will now be under the Office of Cannabis Management. What used to be hemp under the agriculture department will now be under the Office of Cannabis Management. It will be joined by the adult use of cannabis.
Now, for those of us who don't know a lot about marijuana, except when we smell it, what is the difference between the hemp you just mentioned, marijuana, and cannabis? Explain these different types or these words that we keep hearing.
It's actually all one plant, to be honest. The only difference in hemp is that it does not have the same level of THC, which is the part of the drug that actually allows you to feel like you're high, or you're at a different level in terms of rather than having a martini, you would have a marijuana, or you would have some sort of edible marijuana. So hemp is something that people use in the industrial world. It is actually a legal product nationally hemp is, but it does not contain THC. Mostly it contains CBD, and there's not a lot of businesses in the state of New York don't in some ways already sell some sort of product that has CBD in it. Whether or not it has a true value that can provide you with the calmness that CBD will provide for you. No one really knows that, quite honestly, because it's not really regulated that way. But this legislation to legalize adult use of cannabis that does contain THC includes CBD, which means now the hemp product will be more regulated. So even though you can go to your local gas station and see somebody selling hemp, you don't know really what's in there and what its benefits to you may be. Under this legislation, that will be regulated in a way that it will be clear. It will be on the package. This has this amount of CBD in it and this amount of THC in it. Mostly hemp has a very, very small amount of THC and a very, very large amount of CBD, which is a cannabinoid.
Okay, I understand that this new legislation includes setting up a regulated legal marijuana market.
Yes, it does.
Now, would an individual be able to grow and consume their own marijuana?
Yes, they will. Well, day one, once the governor signed the bill, it's actually legal for any responsible adult to have 3 ounces of marijuana on them. If they leave their mother's house and go home, they cannot be arrested and charged with 3 ounces of marijuana because it is a legal product. Now, it is still illegal to sell it, but no one's asking how you got it. The fact is, if you have it, you have not committed a crime. Mm-hmm. It is a legal product at this point. So in 6 months, if you have a medical prescription, you can start to grow your own plants. You can have six mature plants and 6 immature plants. Mm-hmm. Once we get through the regulatory process, then and dispensaries are open to sell adult use, then you can grow your own plants at home as well without having a medical card. And again, you can have 6 plants, 3 mature and 3 immature.
So what is the difference between home possession and personal possession of this marijuana?
There is no difference. At this point, marijuana in the state of New York is a legal product. So it's much like if you went to the liquor store and bought 3 bottles of wine and 1 bottle of vodka. You can, at some point when the dispensaries are open, have the capacity to go to a dispensary and buy whatever you would like to have there. And you could also have 6 plants at home.
Okay. There are various forms of marijuana, I've been told. And they say marijuana is available as an oil, as a liquid, as a nasal spray, and as leaves. And I know you've addressed a lot of this in your bill. What are those types that you have addressed?
Well, I'm sure you know that, there are people who use the plant to cook with. And there are people who use the plant to make edibles, candies. There are people who use the plant to make oils that you may just put on your arthritic knee. There are people who use the plant to make oils that go into a vape pen. You can go to a medical marijuana place now and get those sorts of things there. This legislation allows that to be legal for a certain amount of THC. There are no caps on the THC. We did not cap the amount of THC that could be in a product that one sells, but I believe during the regulatory process that could change because it depends on what levels of THC is in the product that you're using, on how high it will make you and whether or not it will impair your ability to be a responsible adult on the streets of New York.
Where can I smoke?
Well, I'm not a marijuana person either, and I'm not suggesting that anybody smokes it. But here's what I do know, Professor, is that thousands upon thousands of people do. And they do so that it actually makes New York the #1 market for illicit marijuana in the world, not just in the country, but in the world. More people use that product here in New York than anywhere else. And so it's a huge market, and I don't suggest that people do smoke it, but the fact is that they do. And the numbers that they do are much, much larger in the majority community than it is in the minority community. However, the minority community is the one whose lives have been destroyed as a result of it being illegal. So we've structured this legislation so that it's not about revenue for the state, that it's about bringing some opportunities for those people who have suffered from mass incarcerations to turn their lives around. So there is a 50% equity in businesses. We're looking to have 50% for MWB businesses, people who right now may be underground selling on the street corner, however they're doing it. 50% for people who are farmers, distressed farmers, a lot of opportunities for growing in this business, and 50% for, well, that's included in that 50% is disabled veterans. So we're looking to make sure that people who have been negatively impacted by this have an opportunity to be in the business as well. Secondly, the other resources that are going to be garnered from this through the sales tax approach, 40% of that is going to go into the communities and into the lives of the people who suffered. So it's hard to say what those needs are going to be, but you know, and I'm sure your listeners know as well, that people who are incarcerated or in mass numbers tend to all live in the same area and all their communities look alike, whether you are in Utica, New York, Yonkers, New York, Buffalo, New York, Rochester, Bronx, or Brooklyn. The devastation that it has on people's lives and the communities where they live is clear. And we need to focus on giving them an opportunity to turn that around.
I understand that licensing is going to be necessary.
Yes, licenses will be necessary. And if people want to have an idea how licensing may look, because we don't know yet exactly how that will look, we know that there will be 10 different licenses that you can get, and I don't have the list in front of me, but I'm sure you do, Professor. If you go and look at the state's website as it relates to obtaining a liquor license, it could be similar to that. If you look at the state's website in the health department for medical marijuana, it could be similar to that. And if you look in the agriculture department at how people were able to get hemp license, it could be similar to that. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a 5-member control board who will determine how the licenses look, how the regulations look for them. 3 of those members will be selected by the governor, and 2 of them will be selected by the legislature, 1 from the New York State Assembly and 1 from the New York State Senate. You will note, Professor, that this agency is much different than any other state agency ever in the history of New York. Because generally, if it's a state agency, it's completely controlled by the executive branch. The Office of Cannabis Management will be jointly controlled by the executive branch as well as the legislative branch.
There are people, some people are concerned about the effect of using marijuana and driving. What do you have to say to that? How do you?
I would say to them, you know, if they're concerned about that, they should have thought about it while our industry was growing in this state to make us the largest user of this product right now while it's underground. What are we doing about safety with driving now? Not much. I will tell you that this legislation does call for existing driving while impaired laws as they relate to alcohol or impaired from opioids or any other thing that you're impaired by. There is a law in place that says if an officer stops you and they feel like you're impaired, you can be arrested. That does not change with marijuana. No one knows what impairment looks like, THC in your system. One of the things we do know is if you have it in your system, it could stay there for 30 days. That doesn't mean you're impaired. So we need, this bill will call for a study to be done by any research institution within the state of New York to come up with what is the amount of THC in one system that could deem them to be impaired. No one knows that. There are 14 other states that have legalized in this country, as well as Canada, which is like about 20 minutes from where I sit right now in Buffalo. They don't know what the level of THC is for impairment. So it's incumbent upon New York, and I think we're doing the right thing, to do a standalone study and not to do what the Senate wanted us to do, and is to allow officers to do a demonstration study in any old neighborhood where they can just go and stop people. We did offer them to pick another neighborhood to make sure it wasn't a black or brown neighborhood, but they turned that down. So at least they did accept the fact that the research needs to be done, and we're New Yorkers, we should do it.
What do you say to a person who smells what they think is marijuana, who smells what they believe is marijuana? What do you say to that person?
Well, I would say this. Marijuana is now a legal product from the day that the governor signed the bill. So just because you smell it doesn't mean anybody's doing anything illegal. Doesn't mean anybody's doing anything that's going to impair their life or anyone else's. I will tell you that the existing clean air laws as it relates to cigarettes apply to marijuana. So anywhere where you can't smoke a cigarette, you cannot smoke marijuana either. And just for the record, there are hemp businesses in the district that I represent that are dealing with that plant on a regular basis. And if you go by there at the right time of day, you will smell marijuana, but no one can get high from hemp. And so just because you smell it, it doesn't mean that somebody is actually impaired.
What are the opportunities for small businesses who want to get involved in this new marijuana industry?
Well, there are a lot of license opportunities. There's cultivators, there's processors, there's distributors, there's retail, there's micro businesses, there's delivery, there's nurseries, and there's on-site consumption. On-site consumption was important for New York because, as you know, the federal government some 4 or 5 years ago prohibited people who live in public housing from even smoking a cigarette. So you've got a ton of public housings. I know we do in my city, and I'm sure we doing down in your city as well. People who live in there, they should be able to use a legal product without violating a law because they live in a federal property. So on-site consumption, people can get a license for that. These decisions about where license will go for either a dispensary or on-site consumption is up to the local government. So if you have a local government that says we don't want a dispensary and we don't want on-site consumptions in our community, they can say no. A county can't say no. A city can say no. A town can say no, and a village can say no. And even if they say no, the people have the ability to do a petition drive and call for a referendum and for a vote so that the people can speak as opposed to just the elected officials.
What happens to these individuals who have been targeted and who were jailed? What's going to happen now?
Their records will be vacated. The Office of Criminal Justice Services and the Office of Court Administrations are responsible for making sure that if there's anybody incarcerated today as a result of being convicted of low-level marijuana crimes only. Now, if they have other charges, this doesn't speak to that. It just speaks to those who were charged, convicted, and incarcerated based on 3 ounces or less of marijuana. Those people should be vacated. They should be removed from jail immediately. And anyone who has a record that's been out for a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or even 5 years, if you have a felony conviction for low levels of marijuana, those records should be automatically expunged. This bill also adds resources to both of those agencies so that they can do the work that it takes to get through the files and figure out who those people are and remove those records from their life.
We talked about opportunities earlier. What are the opportunities for women who are part of the minority women
business
enterprise? MBWE, yes. Mm-hmm. What are the opportunities for women who are part of this umbrella group?
They are included in the criteria for the 50% equity businesses. So 50% equity businesses includes minority and women-owned businesses. It includes disabled veterans. It includes distressed farmers. By the way, there are 200 Black farmers in the state of New York who are organized and are ready to move forward in using their existing farm operations to funnel into this business. And it also includes people who are had been disenfranchised as a result of the mass incarceration. There could be some people who right now have a really good business, albeit illegal, who could prepare themselves in the next year to 18 months to bring that business above ground. And there are a number of people around the state, including we do it here in Buffalo on a regular basis, is offering opportunities for people to understand, how do you do that? How do you go into business? Cannabis 101, Cannabis 102, Cannabis 103, and we actually have Cannabis 104 coming up, I want to say in the middle of May. And that's specifically to help people understand, how do you get prepared to apply for a license to have a legitimate business. This is a multiple billion-dollar industry. I have to tell you, Professor, over the course of my 8 years of carrying this legislation, because everybody else in the country knows how big the New York State market is, they have been in my office, both in Buffalo and in Albany. And because they want access to this business, which is the reason why we structured it in a way that 50% has to go to that criteria population. Because if you don't do that, the people who are already moneyed, already capitalized, and already in the business in other states will come and gobble it up. And so, of course, they're going to try to do that. But again, the control board has the capacity to shut that down. So there's the control board of 5 people. And I think I described to you how they get there. And there's also an advisory board of 13 people. 7 of which the governor will appoint, 6 of which the legislature will appoint, 3 from the assembly and 3 from the Senate. These are the folks who are going to decide how to resource the 40% resources are expended in the communities where the people were disenfranchised. As you know, if a gentleman is incarcerated or if a mom is incarcerated, that impacts the lives of their children. And since we actually literally have been incarcerating people for multiple decades, that's a lot of people who have been negatively impacted. The residual effects on their life is costing us all more money as a government to take care of them because we denied them so many things. We got to go back and try to fix some of that. How that looks in Utica, I'm not sure. How it may even look in Buffalo, I have some ideas, and I'm not sure how it may look in Brooklyn, but I know that the 17 people who will be on that advisory board will come up with the right way to expend those resources, and not just for people who are really good at writing, responding to RFPs and writing, proposals. We don't need that anymore. We need people who have the ability to demonstrate results. How have you been able to change people's lives? What can you do to change Johnny's life now that he's watched his mother, his father, and his grandfather be incarcerated for low levels of marijuana and not be able to get a job that takes care of him and his family? And by the way, his grandmother probably needs a roof on her house. She probably needs gutters, and they probably need to have lead removed out of it. There's all sort of things that our people will need in order to have a second chance at life. It's more than just expunging records. It's investing into the lives of those people who have been devastated. This is a drug that a plant rather, that most entertainers, jazz musicians, hip hop artists, people use this, and they have been using it for decades. It has not, the only thing that has destroyed people's lives as a result of this plant has been the criminal justice system.
So people have to be very careful, and people need to be aware of the benefits and the risks. What are the, go on, what are the
benefits? There are benefits and there are risks. You know, I've been around a while, and while I wouldn't advise anyone to smoke marijuana, I know that a lot of people do. I mean, I know people who have literally lived their whole life, raised their children, went to work every day, got their college education, and maybe they don't like a dirty martini. I prefer that. They like to smoke marijuana, and they do, and they have never negatively impacted anybody. And so I don't see the plant as the criminal villain that it was made to be by Mr. Anslinger back in the 1930s when America decided to make it an illegal product.
We've been hearing about interaction with cops all over the news. What about the interaction with cops by these persons who are smoking marijuana or who cops believe have been smoking marijuana? And we've only got 30 seconds left.
Well, I can tell you this, that the police department in the great city of Buffalo has already advised their officers that because you smell marijuana is no reason to stop anybody, because it is a legal product. And just like if you smell alcohol on somebody, you can't arrest them for that either. But you can also not be riding around in your car with an open container of beer, and you cannot be riding around in your car smoking marijuana either.
And if you are, then the cops have every right to arrest you.
They have a right to stop and arrest you. That's right. Well, it'll end up being a violation, much like if you riding around open can of beer. That's a violation. That's not a criminal offense. That's a violation. The same thing with marijuana. But if you don't want that kind of attention, then don't do it.
Yep, you're quite right. Marijuana, it's now, what's the big word? Begins with L, legal.
Legal.
And thanks to the work that you have done. I know lots of people are very appreciative of the fact that you have spearheaded this and that you have done this as a Black person. And you may have had lots of opposition because of the color of your skin.
I have.
But
both from Black and white people. By the way, I've even had a minister question my salvation. And I'm born and raised in an AME Zion church. And so I know where my direction is in the afterlife. And I will do nothing that would infringe on that. But,
yes.
You know, people have a right to have whatever question they want to. Here's what I know is right, is that marijuana is a plant. And if it's treated right, treated fairly, and if all people are treated right and treated fairly in this country, we wouldn't have this problem that we have. But we do have it, and we needed to fix it. So it's fixed.
And thanks to you, and thanks to the work of your colleagues to ensure that.
Great colleagues in the New York State Assembly, as well as in the New York State Senate. The Black Puerto Rican Legislative Asian Caucus was phenomenal. We accepted nothing less but the best for our people, and that's what I think we have here.
Thank you, Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes. I got it right.
You're so welcome, sir. Thank you.
We thank you for being on Brooklyn 45 and for the information that you have provided to our viewers.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure.
We invite you who watch our program to suggest topics that you'd like us to discuss. And you can do that by going to our Facebook page and suggesting whatever topic you want us to discuss and to like us as well. Please support us and tell everyone you know on social media about us. On behalf of our Brooklyn 45 team, I'm Sam K.
Brooklyn 45 is a 501c3 not-for-profit, and we welcome your support. Check out our website, brooklyn45.com, and feel free to donate or share it with your friends and family. Have any comments or questions? Send them to our Facebook, facebook.com/brooklyn45tv. If you have any questions or topics you think we should cover next, shoot me an email over at brooklyn45tv@gmail.com. Thank you again for watching.